Step into analysis, please.
Welcome back, everybody. Today we're discussing Westworld Season 4, Episode 6, titled Fidelity. This episode explores much of Hale's justified insecurities around her own plot to take over the world, and gives us a terrifying first-person perspective into one of the single lives that almost 300 Calebs have lived before him. But before we start overthinking an HBO show about robots, let me first do a little call to action. We are trying to hit 50,000 subscribers before the Westworld season is over, and we only have a few weeks to make that happen. If you could, please hit that subscribe button and sound off in the comments below so that I can personally thank you. Much love, everybody, and let's get into it. The episode begins with a tense Outlier rescue being led by Frankie and her mom, who I was so happy to see continue to be a badass despite losing her husband and, of course, being thrown into the apocalypse. 23 years ago, they showed her kind of maybe not really considering her husband's conspiracies, not really valuing the survival training that Caleb was giving to his daughter. And after Caleb vanished, it looks like she simply stepped up and kept herself and her daughter alive, and also casually may have started the resistance. I believe the war buddies that he would talk to online are likely the same group that she went to with this information, like the backup team that was coming for Caleb when he went down at the park. This and Carver's buddies were likely the same people, same foundation of this resistance, at least in this part of the world. There could be hundreds of sects of these resistance groups, and this is the only one that we know about. But so far, that's my theory about how this came to be. The fact that it's a little girl and her mom going to rescue outliers shows just how desperate that they were, and also shows how early Hale was able to take over the majority of the city after we first saw them testing the fly frequency control systems. They rescue Jay but lose another outlier that was probably new on the job as well, based off of just how he interacted and kind of panicked when they discovered that they were detected, which, man, living in this world where you are trying to gather the biggest force humanly possible, it must feel so incredibly upsetting to risk your lives to acquire this bigger force and then lose some along the way. Like, this interaction only does good because this dude turns out to be the future leader of the resistance, but their net gain for this interaction, for the number of people that can save humanity, is still zero after this interaction. Imagine risking your and your daughter's life and getting this dude that snaps at your daughter later on for calling him a brother. My goodness, like this entire thing is just like, it's so tense. I loved the freeze scene, the drone hosts casually walking around the real city, the fly revealing the outlier, and finally them using his capture as a way to save themselves, showing just how little chance they stood against the hosts. It's not like they tried to fight back. They probably knew that was impossible. So it just shows how, again, just how dire this circumstance is, where they just, the second someone is grabbed or detected, they have to, save themselves. They return to the safe house with Jay, and we get this brief shot of graffiti that says free will. The people look demoralized and do not greet the rescuers of this daring mission with anything other than a polite, hey. It feels like they are defeated. It feels very much like they are being driven by Frankie and her mom to continue searching for more outliers. We also get more scenes of Frankie operating the ham radio. Previously, I made a prediction that she figures out the fly 5 frequency because of her continued search for her father. And I think that we may still, see that with her continued use. But based off of how this episode ends, I think it's also entirely possible that the importance of her knowledge of the radio system is simply that she will hear this message from her father later on, and maybe be able to rally the troops for some big push against the oppressive forces of Hale. Bernard and C/Frankie traveled to the Condemned Lands, revealing to us that this is actually the Temperance Park that Hale had built all of those years ago. It would appear that she clearly did not care to maintain this place after it served its short-term purpose, and I guess she never imagined that humans would use this place against her. It does feel like a little bit of an oversight, seeing as there is actively tech here that could be used against her and the other hosts. It's still very much buried here, but hey, I mean, she's got a lot on her plate, and in her defense, she does have this single really slow to trigger drone monitoring the area, so I guess that's enough. They discuss rebuilding Maeve, and Bernard keeps playing this weird, sometimes I casually let people know that I'm a prophet game, which again feels weird. It feels odd to do with these unpredictable human parties. Like, if you told me today I was going to eat cereal because I am that predictable, I would die. I would end human civilization before cereal entered any hole in my body. And maybe that's just me, but I do feel like that's a pretty big percentage of people that would sooner not, do what they would have naturally done if it meant that their existence was trivialized and so plainly reduced to a defined path. So when he's telling Frankie that he never quite knows what she will do, while she is still very much not understanding that he is a host and has seen a billion possible futures, it feels so weird to me. It feels so weird to me when he does it with all of the people. It feels like a really, really odd thing. And the only thing that I can think of during these moments of dialogue are, I guess in those simulated futures, him appearing to be this prophet in front of them at random times, is all a part of the plan. So perhaps that is the case. The reason he so forwardly tells her, I never know what you will do, is because this creates a seed of doubt later that makes her question him and Stubbs, but ultimately will reveal that she can trust him without him sounding like a lunatic that wants the world to believe that he is a prophet or simply a spy for Hale. It's a really interesting dynamic, but I'm moving on. The credits roll and we have a flashback to Caleb playing with his daughter until Hale calls his name, and we see Caleb version 278. Now, this entire sequence of events was movie magic. The first thing that stood out to me were the glass panes with the white opacity. Now, with this and the title, I was probably positioned to consider the James Delos testing container, but again, this was 100% the first thing that crossed my mind when I saw this. The container being divided into fourths was also a great touch. This paired with the fact that literally nothing of comfort exists in this quarter room shows us just how little they care about Caleb or any human compared to the entire room filled with amenities for James Delos. I think that this also perhaps maybe paints a more accurate picture of William as well, because for the majority of the show, they want us to consider him this irredeemable man, but slowly are painting the picture that just like Caleb, he is capable of great evil and great good. And I think that's kind of the point. Maybe all humans are capable of whatever they put their mind to there. So seeing these new containers in a really slight way highlights that further. I pointed out in my season 2 review, but William escaping to the park each year was not solely to exercise his dark passenger, but to go and test James Delos, keeping that promise that he realistically did not have to keep with anyone. And he was painted as a monster, but ultimately he kept his word and would return to the park to issue the Fidelity tests with hundreds of visits probably recorded, or definitely recorded, and we only ever really saw the worst in William. What William provided compared to what Hale provided highlights his willingness to give his time and his energy, while also showing just how much hatred Hale retains for the former rulers of this planet, right? It is immaculate storytelling and set design. Hale flips over this cool hourglass, something that James Delos also had in his container, and I think the purpose of that is to show just how long she has with each iteration before they too become unstable or too unstable to communicate or to be interrogated. Instead of keeping this information on a computer, she makes them face this very real timer that when they are out of sand, they will let the drone host purge them, and they have until that time to speak. Also, just to remind y'all, this hourglass from season 2, $30,000. $30,000. I don't even want to look up what this new one is. I hope it's 29.9 thousand less than the previous one. Regardless, her speech highlights before the big reveal just how many times she has been through this interaction, this repetitive again and again and again, and the loss of a person that she stresses are the hosts that keep taking their own lives, because from previous conversations we know that she considers them her children. She discusses that the hosts are taking their own lives and believes that it is something that Caleb explicitly started because he was able to resist all of those years ago. That he has something that she does not have, but more on that a little bit later. I love the idea that hundreds of versions of Caleb could come to exist, and each one of them come to exist as the same person that would rather die a heinous, tortured death than give up the secret that would damn the rest of mankind. If that does not highlight the good that can exist in people, I don't know what does. He acts purely for others, knowing his pain and suffering are surely guaranteed, and looks death in the face with a smug grin. And this only starts his, against all odds line of thinking, that this blind faith that something greater than himself will defeat evil, and, ooh, baby, that is powerful. Then, of course, they discuss Frankie and how Hale is still hunting her down, and he replies with complete hope and, again, unwarranted faith in his daughter, someone who he hasn't seen in 23 years, that she would continue beating Hale, the robot that just realistically took over the entire world. He believes in his daughter because, what's the alternative, right? Give up hope, die naked and afraid. I think he is an optimist, just like, Optimus Prime. But I'm sorry. I think he's an optimist, just like Dolores, who chooses to see the beauty in the world, bringing to light this season 1 concept where you can either choose to see the worst in humanity or the best of humanity. And the reality is that it's all about your lens, your perspective of the world. That beauty right there is that his only child will be going against all odds to defeat, the greatest enemy that humanity has ever known, and believing that without any additional information, that she would prevail even in the face of this shadow of evil. It is biblical storytelling, and I truly hope that all of us know what it feels like to have someone believe in us the way that, Frankie is believed in this moment. And again, I think this really highlights this conceptual faith that they might be driving a point about in the rest of the season. Hale leaves the room and the white walls fade, revealing the other versions of himself that were further along that James Delos path. We then come to the Roaring Twenties Park, or the Temperance Park, with the plan being to wake up Maeve and ask her the questions about what happened to Frankie's father all of those years ago. Bernard hints that he used to work at Westworld, and we come to the hidden underground tech labs. They casually discuss intent versus impact, as nobody really meant for the robots to take over the world, but they did nevertheless. I would honestly argue that Ford may have wanted that for a couple of reasons, because he had such a dim view of humanity. But I think that is a discussion for another time, and also one that I've kind of already talked about. Bernard locates some of the host repair tools and says that her control unit was corrupted, and they need this host's control unit to replace it. Also, this is the Hector replacement. So in a way that's kind of like Maeve is using Hector's control unit. I don't know. It feels like something sweet here is happening. However, this dialogue was very weird to me. The hosts are their control units, so for hers to be corrupted without the forge, without a backup of some kind, or without him rebuilding her from memory, I'm not sure how we're going from a corrupted host control unit inside of Maeve to her assumingly being the Maeve that we know and love once again, coming back to life. They discuss using mirrors later on, but even still, if this does turn out to be the old, tried and true Maeve, maybe the dialogue should have been adjusted a little bit here. This corrupted line could be hinting something deeper, or it could just be them, I don't know, being lazy about the damage to this very real system that we've explored so many times now. They draw what I can only imagine is an oat milk bath for Maeve, and Bernard once again discusses the percentages of success. You may notice the winning percentages are going lower and lower with every part that he needs to be successful, and I once again think that we are going to get a massive cliffhanger about this plan whenever we get there. There's going to be there's a 1% chance that if I turn this machine back on or I flip this switch, we save the world. And then they flip it, and either the screen goes black or we just never see Bernard's perspective ever again. His final death will be in this moment where it keeps us on the edge of our seats, wondering if Bernard died happy because he was meant to die, or if Bernard died and in those final moments realized that, all was lost and that he failed. And, ooh, baby, please make that happen. That is money. Anyway, Bernard brings up this concept of Hale building hosts in the simulation before putting them back into the real world. Now, this Super interesting. It was such a quick line. I didn't even notice it my first watch, but it means that Hale is capable of doing what Bernard did with the simulating of future timelines. It also means that we need to see this simulated creation of hosts from Hale. This is a massive reveal, and while I think that we've talked about the theoretical ways that she could create new hosts, as far as I know, I don't think we've seen this. We've kind of seen like just what they become, unless it's been right in front of us this entire time. I think it's entirely possible that any number of these storylines that are happening could be this storyline showing how exactly she creates hosts, where she recreated this forge or this cradle technology and has simulated not just the park, but the entire world to observe how the host minds would be developing outside of that limited, space. I would be pretty torn if we get another aspect ratio change like we did, at the big reveal of season 2. But hey, I mean, expect the unexpected, right? It is possible that literally this entire season is Hale plotting what needs to happen in order to achieve her end goals, and is in reality coming to terms with why she should not specifically be the one who runs the world. And as much as she may instinctively want to, may need to create a system that works without her. I think that if it is not that, or some version of that, Christina's timeline is the most likely to be simulated, or just in the very far future. Again, there are so many variables in this equation. I don't think that I understand the complete picture just yet. I don't know if there's enough information but I am definitely going to be contemplating this entire week to see if I can rewatch everything and put the pieces back together outside of a scope of this episode breakdown. All I want to really say for this moment is that we just got confirmation that Hale is once again using this cradle technology, and the implications of that are massive. They discuss Hale upgrading the technology that was used to scan human minds, and it is now in the mirrors, which was a cool reveal, and I think could also, reveal later on why mirrors in Christina's plot are so heavily used all the time. There's always mirrors. Everyone's looking in mirrors. Well, I mean, Christina's always looking at mirrors. And of course, then Frankie gets scanned. They take the processor, again using it for something related to the uncorrupting of Maeve, and we once again return to Caleb. He sees the other versions of himself wanting to escape, trying to escape, but really he is simply looking in a mirror of what he is fated to become. He has some casual conversations with the former selves, and they have a pretty dim outlook on life. And so starts the Master Hale plan to observe Caleb. This little needle contraption pricks his finger and he falls back into a dream, giving us a chance to see more of his first interactions with his wife. The beach on the ceiling here also reminded me of when we first met Caleb in season 3, maybe meant to show that this is more of the long-term care that he was receiving. The scene changes and we see a drone host looking at him and his eyes not dilating due to whatever was in that pin prick. He finds the arrow and escapes into the trash chute right before being incinerated, and we once again return to the hospital. Caleb asks about when he was instead of where, and the importance of that is to remind us that he is a host, experiencing memories just like the hosts do, being fully transported back and forth through time and that moment, and again being able to recall perfect interactions instead of like a human memory where it's like kind of a gray image that we're remembering things with. This is, of course, shown previously with Bernard recalling Charlie, and it can be really jarring at times, and I think that is exactly what Caleb is going through, as well as everything else. However, we've never seen this in the human-host hybrids, so I think we are very subtly being shown more of the progression that this human and host form is taking. Hale may be cracking the formula to this immortality equation for humans, maybe purposely, maybe not, by making them suffer time and time again. We then come to Bernard working on Maeve, making her all pretty again, and Frankie talks about her mom. She notes that her mom got sick and had to go through some extensive care to maintain her quality of life. Again, during this apocalypse at a younger age. It's not exactly specified when, but Frankie, what a trooper, right? Her realization of the same care that's being taken or given to Maeve is what makes her mad. It makes her realize that Bernard knew this host more personally, and instigates an argument to know exactly why Maeve was the last host that she saw running off with her father all of those years ago. Their conversation pauses when the troops return from their rescue mission, and they discuss there being a mole. Frankie shoots first and asks questions later. Bernard clearly has this second to kind of prepare for it, again showing that he knew that this was coming. Also, I keep saying again, I feel like that I need a counter. Someone count them. Someone comment below how many times I say again per video. Again, confirming her suspicion that Bernard was a host. They reveal the scan of Frankie, and Bernard says that they must trust him about getting scanned. Now, my first thought was that this was clearly going to be used to see exactly who the mole was, because that would be the quickest way to figure out who was and who wasn't. But that didn't happen. Instead, I'm thinking the human scans are for the purpose of being uploaded or recreated later on, but it is not made clear later on in this episode. All we know is that these, for some reason, are important, and again, I think it relates to probably being uploaded. We then return to Caleb entering the Olympiad elevator, as noted by the floor 47 on the door frame here. If you recall, we have seen this before. This is the building and the floor in which Christina works on. So they included this for a reason, and I think it points to Christina's timeline taking place much later than the one now. I am constantly looking for markers about how her story connects with the other stories, and in episode 5, I thought that it appeared that they gave us a little bit of that. When Hale flies back to the city, or comes back to the city, I don't think they fly, I think she's, untranscending or coming back from the cloud. She meets William and has this scene, and then in the exact same episode, we see her meeting Christina for lunch. However, this could very well be tricky editing like we've seen in the past when they showed us the Westworld control room interacting with William's explosive request and Dolores straying too far from her loop. It's also possible that the entire world is gone and Christina is literally just alone in a deserted city, retracing her steps for a yet to be revealed reason. This show has so many variables that make the grander plot really difficult to figure out, but hey, that is what it's all about. Regardless, Caleb continues down his path and fights through the cognitive dissonance. He stops for this tiny baby hammer and fights off a drone host and discovers more traces of his former selves trying to escape. He enters the vents, enter Among Us meme, and we return to Bernard and Stubbs. He very narrowly convinces C to investigate the resistance team, and she goes off to contemplate what to do. Her and Jay discuss this exact thing briefly, and further poisons her to start questioning the people around her, of course, except for himself. She then arrests this fellow human, and we come to Hale and Clementine. Her questioning Clem makes me think that she, as well, is also very much questioning the people around her. And maybe just like in C's scenario, there is an imposter or some kind of mole. I fully believe that she could at some point resist the orders given by Hale and be that wild card that betrays Hale once she realizes that Maeve and maybe the grander resistance is going to make something happen. Caleb is doing more Caleb things, and he sees the past version of himself and uses it as a cushion to stop his fall. I feel like this would still hurt so bad, though. Oh my god. He has more flashbacks and makes it to the roof, which is definitely an interesting route of escape. We return to C questioning Jay, and he reveals his hand when he claims that she is like a sister to him. And then, of course, it gets revealed. This very look last episode was one that I kept questioning over and over again, because it was just like, why show that, right? But ultimately, I didn't include it because, any number of things. There's a lot of reasons. My videos are long. In this case, it shows the moment in which Jay was replaced by the host. C then battles the host Jay, and we see Caleb using the tower to record and broadcast this message for his daughter. It was a little odd to me that he was able to do these things, but then I remembered that he had been working on the tops of buildings for many, many years. So maybe he was very uniquely trained to do this exact thing, which may have been the reason why Hale constructed the plot in which she did. He calls his daughter Cookie once again, showing exactly where she got the nickname C. He gives her some parting words of encouragement, and after 23 years says everything that he possibly can to try to be a good father in that moment. And again, father goals there. C hears the first part of the message and unloads all of her bullets very poorly for someone who is trained to fight hosts. And the day was once again saved, just like it was all of those years ago, by Maeve. Our girl is back, though again, she was only gone for like an episode or two, so it's still good. I like Maeve. It gets revealed that this was all of Hale's plot, and ultimately that she has done this because she sat through his memories hundreds of times, which, this is one of those moments where I'm just like, yes, big clue about the simulation technology that she is using. Time must move differently than it does in real life, and it must behave similar to the way that we've seen other simulation technology work with the Sublime, because she watched hundreds of lifetimes to study what made him so unique, and she found nothing. So that's when she created this plot. He once again enforces this belief or this faith in his daughter that she will prevail against the forces of evil, and says that humans did not infect the hosts, but Hale did. He brings up this idea of this being Hale's world and not one that a host nor a human would ever want to live in. She created a world through her lens of reality, through her perspective, believing that she knew best for her people, which is a very human and very narcissistic and very presumptuous thing to do. This, in a very direct way, highlights the beauty of diversity and the power of understanding that your perspective of the world is not the only perspective worth considering. So creating a world or a system or a government or a structure with only the insight of a single being being considered, this could only ever lead to failure. As hosts such as William realize that they are living at the mercy of a higher power in a world that they will always be second in. And humans maybe realize, or make them realize, that there is that hierarchy structure and they are simply just in an order. And not ultimately living what they could do, because they have always been positioned in a very unique way that benefits Hale. And again, there is, I guess, a loss of freedom there. Regardless, Hale kills Caleb, and we see her once again performing self-harm, and this time standing atop a skyscraper, letting the blood fall to the ground below her. If this isn't the most upfront foreshadowing about how she is going to take her own life, I do not know what is. We then return to Maeve being a certified cutie, sitting at the imitation of a bar that she once worked at for a very, very long time. Her and C talk, inspired to take Hale on together, which I have no doubt would have made Caleb very happy to see. The final moments show the room being repaired and another iteration of Caleb being created for testing. And something tells me that build 279 may be the last build, or maybe the one true Caleb host that is strong enough to make it out of here for real, to escape the city or escape and defeat Hale. However, if that happens, and I think all of us, should be constantly questioning whether or not we can trust that Caleb host, or if, again, this was all a part of Hale's master plan. Or, maybe she knows that Caleb will lead her to the rest of the resistance, or will reveal something about the outliers that she has not been able to observe in the lab environment. In a lot of ways, this Hale reminds me of Ford from season 1, where ultimately we believe that we have this character figured out, but then it's revealed that he had everyone's best intentions in mind. I think that maybe it's not going to be a big reveal like that, like she's playing for the other team, but more so that she is master of this domain. And we may think that she does not have everything under control, but she may very much have everything under control. And all of this needs to happen in the exact way that it needs to happen for this greater reason, just as Bernard needs everything to happen on his side for that exact reason. But with that we come, thank you, Morty, to the end of the episode. Much love, everybody. Once again, if you have not subscribed to this channel and you liked this video, please do so now. It would mean so much to me. and make it just a little bit closer for me to be doing this full time. Special shout out to everyone over on Patreon. Michael Link is once again our top tier donor and receiver of my second kidney. Contract binding. Special shout out to also everybody that has been sharing my screenshots, like from the videos, in the Westworld, fan pages. I 100% of the time, well, probably see those appear on my timeline, and I am just, I'm so tickled. Like to have some observable degree of impact on this community or the conversation as a whole, outside of my own platform. I truly consider that moment just so wholesome. I consider this channel a blessing, and I am so happy that you find my perspective of the world worth your time. Much love, everybody, and I cannot wait to talk to you all again soon.